This is Baseball Without Borders, a production of the World Baseball Network. Today is January 27th. We're going to talk about Ronald Acuna Jr. hitting a home run, pimping it like nobody's ever seen before, and then walking out of his team in the Venezuelan Professional Baseball League final. A final that's also featuring dueling protests over ineligible players and when music is played. Down in Puerto Rico, the Indios de Mayaguez have won the Liga Beisbol Profesional, Roberto Clemente Championship Series. Jeremy Rivera, he of the interesting number choice, was the series MVP. Puerto Rico has also announced the World Baseball Classic coaching staff for the island. Curacao added two notable Major League players, or former Major League players, to the coaching staff for the Caribbean Series. And the Liga ARCO, Mexicana del Pacifico, Game 6 of the final between Algodoneros de Guasave and Cañeros de los Moches. All right, we're actually recording this time. So, not the first time I've done that, recording a podcast, forgetting to hit the record, or it didn't take. So here we are. Anyhow, as we were saying, Ronald Acuna Jr., Matt, Game 2 of the LVBP final. He's playing for Tiburones de la Guerra, played 10 games in the regular season, came back to play in the final with the grudging permission of the Atlanta Braves. In the second game, he, in the fourth inning, homers to right and then pimps the home run like nobody has ever pimped a home run. He admired it, took 3 steps, stopped, gestured to the dugout, gestured to the fans, slowly made his way around the bases after rounding third, gestures at the Leones de Caracas opposing dugout, at the fans there, touches home plate, and then the game was being played on the road, and something that's never cool, in the stands, Leones fans got after members of Acuna's family. There were beer and possibly some punches thrown, and Acuna walked out on Tiburones and announced his retirement from Venezuelan baseball in the 7th inning of that game. The series has now played 3 games. It's 2-1 in favor of?
In favor of Leones del Caracas. They're up 2-1. Game 4 is tonight at Estadio Forum La Guaira. It will be streamed on baseballplay.com. So it's a paid subscription website, so go check it out. 6:00 p.m. Eastern is first pitch of the Venezuela final.
There's a lot of heat going on in this series right now, but first let's just talk about Acuna Jr. This is a guy that he's from Venezuela. He's one of the bright young stars of Major League Baseball. The Atlanta Braves have $120 million invested in him, so they've been kind of trying to keep him from re-injuring an MCL issue that's been going on for the past couple of seasons. So he was limited to 10 games in the Venezuelan League winter season and then came back in time to play in the final. And then this happens. And unfortunately, that means we're not going to see him in the Caribbean Series. But Matt, what do you make of Acuna doing what he did after the home run and then walking out?
It's just, you're playing 10 games in winter ball. I mean, it's just a lot of expression. I mean, if you're a baseball purist and you see a lot of the home runs that are, pimped in Major League Baseball, and if you haven't glared upon watching certain the Winter League action that has happened from this season, that in the Caribbean, they take a lot of this pride, I'll say, in how people celebrate, scoring on the base pass. It could be a bases loaded walk or hit by a pitch with the bases loaded, and the dugouts from both teams are always cheering. It's the flavor of baseball down there.
Yeah, it's completely different than American baseball, where for the longest time, for whatever reason, and it's somewhat of a cultural thing, American baseball is very reserved. You sit on your hands. The Hall of Fame baseball columnist Bus Said, who wrote for the Trenton Times, where I grew up outside of Trenton, New Jersey. He was put in the Hall of Fame in 1989. Always said he liked his baseball plain vanilla, which is really, not inclusive of anything that you see in Latin American baseball.
Miguel Cabrera, that's another, point of example. He doesn't really celebrate a lot of his base hits or captivated mammoth home runs in his career. He's just a player that, wears the old English D on his chest. Like he just wants to play baseball and just play for pride, even for the World Baseball Classic too. He has played in 4 World Baseball Classics in his career, Miguel Cabrera, and he plays with class. He doesn't taunt at the pitchers or opposing teammates of when he does, follow the path through the baseball.
Now, that said, a Venezuelan baseball reporter, and I can't find the tweet now. I did not index it well enough to pull it up on command, noted that he thought that Acuna's performance, or whatever you want to call it, was a little bit excessive, and said specifically, Miguel Cabrera doesn't do that. He doesn't need to. Which is an old, kind of like the old, when you win 20 in the show, you can let the fungus grow in on your shower shoes and the media will think you're colorful, to quote Kevin Costner in Bull Durham. I get that it's different, and I think we should appreciate the difference, the cultural difference in Latin American baseball vis-a-vis American baseball. But I do think Acuna was a little bit over the top.
Yeah, you only played 10 games, and reinforced by the Braves, it's a different parameter of when you suit up for the winter leagues that I feel like a lot of the prospects that play in the winter leagues, they look up to high caliber players like Robinson Cano.
Absolutely,
and
because
Acuna.
We should note that, there are a lot of prospects playing in these leagues. There are a lot of significantly older guys playing in these leagues, like Fernando Rodney playing in the Lidom, who's 45 years old, still throwing. Fernando Rodney, 16 years in the major leagues or something like that?
Yeah, and also won the World Baseball Classic in 2013.
Right. So, there's a guy that's still playing. So there's a good mix of prospects, current major leaguers, former major leaguers. But, when you're kind of a big dog, as Acuna is, those younger players are going to look at what you do, and whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. But we should move on and note that not only do we have that with Acuna walking out, and we should revisit what happened with his family too, because that kind of stuff is just what happened was, and there are videos of this on Twitter, of the fight that happened during the 7th inning of that game, beer thrown, maybe some punches involving Acuna's family, and that led to him walking away. Like, I've never been in a situation as a baseball fan in my life where I thought that somebody deserved to get punched or, get a beer thrown at them, but that's just me.
A University Stadium, it's just that atmosphere there is rowdy. Since they've had fans back at that stadium, you will see chaos throughout a lot of games you watch in Venezuela. There's just sometimes the security isn't as high classified there, or fans get crazy at these games. It's a different atmosphere if you watch a Caribbean series or if you watch any regular season game in winter ball alongside the World Baseball Classic. A lot of fans come with pride. They bring instruments to the games. There's a lot of different tendencies of what can happen at these stadiums. But University Stadium is the practice stadium prior to the Caribbean series that is next week, just to note with. So that will not be one of the venues in Venezuela for the Caribbean series.
Right, they're going to be playing at La Rinconada in Caracas.
And La Guaira also. They'll
Yes.
split between 2 stadiums for that week span.
So, elsewhere you mentioned musical instruments, and we now have dueling protests in this series as well. Tiburones alleges that in the second game, the Leones used an illegal player, David Gutierrez, who's a Mexican pitcher. He had been placed on the restricted list and then was activated. He's supposed to be on the restricted list for 10 days. He was on the restricted list for less than 10 days. And by being activated, that may have also given Tiburones, it may have also given Caracas 6 non-Venezuelan players. They're only allowed 5. That said, the league did not uphold that protest. They overruled it. So the result from Game 2 is going to stand. Now, then Leones came right back and said the Tiburones fans and the stadium were continuing to play music while the game was in progress, which is against the LVBP rules. And no ruling's been made on that yet, but it's certainly turning up the heat on this final series with two teams that are playing for the opportunity to basically play in the Caribbean Series on their home field.
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be a good atmosphere to see what happens in that series. Even if it goes the distance, it will be less than 48 hours till all the roster changes have to be made for the team that is representing the Venezuela League. And the last few months for the Venezuela League, two teams that used to be under parameters of having free agents, Tigres de Aruga and Magallanes de Navegantes, they have lifted on playing with free agents and now can play with MLB affiliate players for the first time. So the League of Venezuela is growing. The talent is going to be circuiting throughout many years to come for Venezuela, and having the home turf of either Tiburones de La Guaira could play some of their games at their stadium in La Guaira, or playing in La Riconada. It favors either both teams, even with Leones del Caracas not playing at University Stadium as well. What the home crowd can capture for Estadio La Riconada that has 38,000 fans. Now, mind you, that is the highest capacity, seating capacity in the second edition of the Caribbean Series. From 1949 to 1960, a few Caribbean Series were held at Estadio Latinoamericano in Havana, Cuba, which holds 56,000.
Okay.
So it's neat to see a big stadium like La Riconada, which, by the way, looks like Nationals Park if you had to do a rendering glance.
Very much like it.
Yeah, it's going to be a good atmosphere to see what the fans can bring
and
for that week span.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
No, we can't, Siri. Pardon my Apple Watch for interrupting our podcast. That said, we're going to have coverage of the LVBP final in English on worldbaseball.com. You can check it out. We'll also recap it on our next show on Tuesday. Speaking of the Caribbean Series, we now know who's going to be representing Puerto Rico. It's going to be the Indios de Mayaguez. Jeremy Rivera won the MVP, but you watched the last game of the final, I believe. Tell us a little bit about what happened. And that was a 7-game series. It was exciting. I watched 4 of the games, and I think you watched the other 3.
Yeah, so Gigantes de Carolina, they walked off on the few days prior to Game 7. Indios, Carolinas de Mayaguez. Mayaguez forced a Game 6. I'm trying to recap all this right now. They forced a Game 6 to go to a Game 7. So, it was a 2-1 game, and basically, Mayaguez pitching stuck out. Whalen pitched 6 innings, really dealt throughout.
There was a lot of good pitching in this series.
Yeah, it was a lot of good pitching. Several good offensive players. Emmanuel Rivera, Jeremy Pena, Danny Ortiz, who played with Pueblos de Pericos de Pueblo last year in the La Liga Mexicana de Beisbol League. So there's a lot of good talent that is surfacing in Puerto Rico. And there's great players that were filling those rosters that played through the AA circuit from last year that played this Clemente League season.
And Jeremy Rivera of Indios de Mayaguez, the series MVP, played great in the series. He had the walk-off hit in Game 7 to end it. But not only that, when you join a professional team, the equipment manager is going to ask you what number you want. And Jeremy Rivera went for it. He took number 69.
It's the cake.
I give him credit. He went for it. He did it. So, if you're looking for an Indios de Mayaguez jersey to buy, maybe maybe Jeremy Rivera is or isn't for you, depending upon how childish your sense of humor is. But that said, let's move on and talk about the Puerto Rican coaching staff for the World Baseball Classic, which was announced the other day.
Yeah, so the coaching staff for the World Baseball Classic on Team Puerto Rico will fill with manager Yadier Molina, bench coach Alex Cintron, pitching coach Ricky Bones, bullpen coach Jose Quero Rosado, and also hitting coach Victor Rodriguez. Juan Gonzalez will be the assistant hitting coach on the Puerto Rico staff, who last managed Puerto Rico in the 2017 World Baseball Classic.
And he was at the Caribbean Cup, wasn't he?
Yeah, he managed the Caribbean Cup circuit also.
Back in December.
And third base coach will be Luis Papa Rivera. And first base coach Jose Molina at the helm of the Puerto Rico coaching staff.
Pretty strong staff. And Puerto Rico has been to a World Baseball Classic final. They're undoubtedly going to have a strong team. They've been to 2 finals. That's right. And, you know, one of the things that we've talked about a little bit with them, pitching might have to step up, but they got Marcus Stroman.
Yeah, they got him from Team USA. I mean, it's only going to be a matter of time to see how many innings he could fill, and along with Jose Barrios and Edwin Diaz. You know, it's good to see that the bullpen and maybe the built-in of the starting pitching can prevail Puerto Rico to make it out of the first end of the pool round in Miami, because they'll continue the course of Miami for the rest of the World Baseball Classic.
Briefly, just remind us of the teams that are playing in Miami that we're going to see down there, because that's going to be a tough pool to get out of.
I'll start with the last qualifier, Nicaragua. Israel will bring a high affiliate ball club with several major leaguers, and the 2 powerhouses, Dominican Republic and Venezuela. I mean, it's just
and
the
Puerto
best,
Rico.
The
it's
best
going to be
of global baseball.
It's going to be incredible to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's move on. Another team that is going to be in the Caribbean Series, the Curacao team, which is a team of professionals. Curacao does not really have a winter league, but they were invited to send a team of professionals to the Caribbean Series. And a couple of really recognizable names added to the coaching staff. If you collected baseball cards in 1990, you know who Hensley Mullins is, because he was going to be the next big guy. And you know what? My stack of Hensley Mullins rookie cards is right next to my stack of Greg Jeffries rookie cards, because they're both worth squat after 32 years. But that said, Hensley Mullins added to the Curacao coaching staff, and Andrew Jones, who long major league career, went on. He was an all-star in Japan after he played in the major leagues, had a great career, homered in his first 2 at-bats in the 1996 World Series. Who could forget that? Mm-hmm. As I believe he was 18 or 19 at the time.
Yeah, no, he was 17 years old, if I'm not mistaken, or 18.
No, I think he was 18.
He was 18, and he also played in the 2006 World Baseball Classic for the Netherlands.
Right?
During their first year of the World Baseball Classic.
You know, it's going to be interesting to see the Curacao team, because they've got several major leaguers. They've got a coaching staff with a lot of talent. That's a team that, you know, could be very good in the Caribbean Series. It's hard to gauge how good they'll be against some of the other teams, but we'll see.
I mean, yeah, it's going to be a good contest to see. I mean, they'll compete against Dominican Republic, Mexico, and whoever Indios de Mayaguez brings for Puerto Rico. I mean, you got guys like Jerkson Profar, Jonathan Scope, free agent now, and Drelton Simmons that can really rally in the offense as well. You know, with pitching, they got a little bit of young stint of certain guys, but Jair Jurgens, I mean, just a trailblazer type of player that has been playing
a lot of guys with a lot of good experience.
Yeah.
You know, and not to mention all name team member Ray Wendley Van Gerp.
Yeah. From the from the Caribbean Cup this past December. But some of those guys from that Caribbean Cup roster are on this Caribbean Series roster. And during the span of this tournament for the Caribbean Series, Curacao and the Kingdom of Netherlands will do scouting abbreviations for the Netherlands team of the World Baseball Classic. They'll start out in Pool A in Taichung against Italy, Panama, China, and host nation Chinese Taipei also as well, and Cuba. Cuba will be in Pool A, so it's going to be a world of talent. To see
they could be a sleeper
around.
pick to get out of Pool A, I think.
I think so too.
But that's still a month or so off. And then finally, still going on, the Liga ARCO Mexicana del Pacifico, Game 6, Cañeros de los Moches and Algodoneros de Guasave.
Yeah, Game 6 was last night. Pitchers duel out in down in Algodoneros region, Guasave's region. And Guasave forced a Game 6. That'll be played tomorrow night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be streamed on extrabase.tv. So if you're looking for the Liga ARCO leagues going into future end seasons, that will be streamed on extrabase.tv with a subscription panel that will be paid. So yeah, there's a lot of good talent guys. Like I said the other day, Jesse Castillo, I mean, he's still killing it with his big left-handed bat power and probably could help Guasave, get back to the Caribbean Series, since it has been 35 plus years since they've been in the
I think 1986, right?
Series. Los Cañeros de Mochis was in 85 and Guasave was in 73.
Oh, wow. So it's been I knew one of them was the mid-'80s when I was a kid, and one of them was the 70s. I wasn't quite sure which one.
We could brief this on the fly, too. But, so it's going to be cool to see who Mexico could bring to the Caribbean Series as well. I mean, Yasmani Tomas, he was going to be a candidate to play on the Cuba national team. But, certain issues have flown by Federation officials and his personal dealt stature too with deciding not to play with Cuba for the World Baseball Classic. There's a lot of good talent. Isaac Rodriguez dealt a lot through the major league circuit. Roberto Valenzuela is shortstop. So both middle infielders that can contribute and possibly still be on the roster come next week in Caracas.
Okay, so tonight, Leones de Caracas and Tiburones de La Guera at La Guera, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. In the Venezuelan final, that series is 2-1 in favor of Caracas. And we can watch that on Beisbol Play.
Yes, baseballplay.com.
That's BEISBOL Play.com. And then tomorrow, which is Saturday, January 28th, Game 5 of the Venezuelan series will be at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Beisbol Play. And then at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Game 6 of the Liga ARCO Mexicana del Pacifico Championship Series, Guasave at Los Moches. That game's going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern. And you can get that on extrabase.tv for a subscription. We will have recaps of all those games on worldbaseball.com, either Matt or I or possibly somebody else writing about them. And you can be sure to check out worldbaseball.com for all the winter ball information that we can get you in English from the fingertips of two guys who have a lot going on.
Yeah, and I wanted to make a correction. So the Los Cañeros de Mochis last played in the Caribbean Series in 2003. And Algodoneros de Guasave, they were founded in 1965. They only have one championship. And when they made the Caribbean Series in 1972, that was the third year that Mexico was participating in the Caribbean Series. So just a little fact check and trivia to add that part of the segment.
All right, there we go. Well, we're going to be back on Tuesday with another podcast, I believe. So by then we should know who has won the Venezuelan series, whether the Tiburones protest will be upheld or Leones counter protest, whether music was played while pitchers were in motion. We'll know who will have won the Mexican Pacific League Championship as well as the Venezuelan League Championship, hopefully. And we'll be ready to pick some winners in the Caribbean Series, hopefully.
Yeah, first place and also third place abbreviations as well for this Caribbean series held in Caracas, Venezuela.
Yeah, so we'll be back on Tuesday with that. So until next time, smoke 'em inside.